If you enjoyed this audiobook, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge, and when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the book. Chapter 1: The Invisible Price Tag. Part 1: The Choices We Don't See. When behavioral economist Richard Thaler won the Nobel Prize in 2017, he revealed something fascinating about his daily routine. Every morning, he stood at his kitchen counter holding a banana and an apple, knowing full well that choosing one meant missing the vitamins and benefits of the other. This simple moment captures something profound about how we live. Every choice carries an invisible price tag that most of us never notice. Think about your last trip to the grocery store. You grabbed that bag of chips instead of the healthier nuts. The obvious cost was the $3 you spent. But what was the hidden cost? Maybe it was the energy crash you felt 2 hours later, or the way you felt sluggish during your afternoon meeting. Perhaps it was the opportunity to fuel your body with something that would have kept you sharp and focused. The real expense wasn't written on any receipt. Netflix understood this invisible economics better than most. In 2007, while Blockbuster was focused on the obvious costs of running physical stores, Netflix saw the hidden price their customers were paying. Every Friday night trip to Blockbuster meant 30 minutes of driving, browsing, and waiting in line. That time had value. Those customers were trading convenience for the ritual of the video store experience. Netflix bet that most people would eventually realize this trade-off wasn't worth it. They were right. But here's what makes this story interesting. Blockbuster's executives weren't stupid. They saw Netflix coming. The problem was they calculated costs the way most of us do, by looking at the obvious expenses: store rent, employee salaries, inventory costs. They missed the invisible price their customers were paying in time and frustration. We make similar miscalculations every day. You stay late at work to finish one more project thinking you're being productive. But what's the hidden cost? Maybe it's missing dinner with your family, or skipping the gym session that would have given you energy for tomorrow. Maybe it's the trust you're slowly eroding with people who matter to you. The Danish concept of hygge became popular worldwide because it recognizes these invisible trade-offs. When you choose to spend a quiet evening at home with candles and a good book, you're not just saving money on entertainment. You're trading the stimulation of a night out for the restoration that comes from stillness. Both choices have value, but only one serves what you need in that moment. What if we started seeing these hidden costs before we made our choices? What if we asked ourselves not just, what will this cost me, but what will this cost me to give up? The most successful people I know have developed this skill naturally. They see the invisible price tags attached to every decision, and they choose accordingly. Part 2: The Path Not Taken. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, he didn't just launch new products, he killed dozens of existing ones. The Newton handheld, multiple computer lines, printers, and countless software projects all disappeared. His team was horrified. These weren't failed products, many were profitable. But Jobs understood something most of us struggle with. Every project Apple kept meant saying no to something potentially transformative. This is where opportunity cost gets personal. It's not just about money. It's about the life you don't live because you're living this one. Think about your last major decision. Maybe you chose graduate school over a job offer, or moved across the country for love instead of staying for career advancement, or spent your Saturday helping a friend move instead of working on your side project. In each case, you gained something valuable. But what did you give up? The friend who chose Harvard Business School over a startup opportunity in 2008 still wonders about that path. The startup became Instagram, sold to Facebook for $1 billion. But she also built a thriving consulting practice and met her husband in Boston. Which choice was right depends on what you value most. But both paths were real, and only one could be walked. Research from psychologist Barry Schwartz shows we're happiest when we acknowledge these trade-offs honestly. People who obsess over the perfect choice often end up less satisfied than those who accept that every decision closes doors. The key isn't avoiding tough choices. It's recognizing what you're really choosing between. Consider Netflix's Reed Hastings in 2007. He could have focused on perfecting DVD delivery or invested heavily in streaming. The company's DVD business was thriving, generating predictable revenue. But Hastings saw the opportunity cost. Every dollar spent optimizing physical delivery was a dollar not spent building digital infrastructure. He chose to compete with his own successful business. Blockbuster's leaders saw the same choice differently. They calculated that streaming would cannibalize their profitable store rentals and late fees. They were right about the immediate costs, but wrong about what they'd give up by waiting. By 2010, Netflix had 20 million streaming subscribers while Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. The most successful people I know have learned to ask a different question. Instead of "what will this get me?" they ask, "what will I give up if I don't do this?" That shift in perspective changes everything. What opportunities are you not seeing because you're too focused on what you might lose? Part 3. The cost of one more thing. When my daughter was 7, she discovered a new mobile game. Free to download, colorful graphics, endless levels. Within 2 weeks, she'd spent $40 on power-ups and extra lives. I wasn't angry about the money. I was fascinated by what she'd traded away without realizing it. That $40 could have bought books, art supplies, or saved towards something bigger. But the real cost wasn't financial. Those 2 weeks of screen time replaced afternoon bike rides, drawing sessions, and conversations over snacks. She'd chosen immediate gratification over experiences that compound over time. This pattern shows up everywhere in adult life, dressed in more sophisticated packaging. Consider the streaming wars of the last decade. The average American household now subscribes to 3.4 streaming services, spending roughly $60 monthly. Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, Apple TV+, HBO Max, each one seems reasonable in isolation. $10 to $15 for thousands of hours of content feels like a bargain. But economist Tim Harford calculated something interesting. Those same households spend about 30 minutes per day actually watching content. That's roughly $4 per hour of entertainment, more expensive than most movie theaters. The real cost isn't just the subscription fees piling up. It's the books left unread, the conversations not had, the skills never developed. Amazon's Jeff Bezos understood this psychology when designing Prime. The annual membership fee feels like a sunk cost, making each additional purchase feel free. Members spend about twice as much as non-members, not because they need more items, but because the psychological barrier to adding one more thing has been removed. The same trap catches us in our daily schedules. We say yes to coffee meetings, volunteer commitments, and weekend activities because each one seems valuable. But productivity researcher Cal Newport found that knowledge workers who juggle more than 5 significant commitments simultaneously see their quality of work drop by 40%. What's the hidden cost of one more thing? It's not just the money or time. It's the focus you can't give to what matters most. It's the energy you don't have for the people who count. It's the space you need for thoughts to breathe and ideas to grow. The next time you're tempted to add something to your life, ask yourself, what am I really giving up? The answer might surprise you. Part 4. Regret, Relief, and Rethinking. When Steve Jobs decided to kill the iPod in 2010, Apple was walking away from a billion-dollar business. The device had transformed the company and defined a generation's relationship with music. Yet Jobs knew something most people didn't. Keeping the iPod alive would cost Apple the iPhone's future. Every engineering hour spent on iPod improvements was an hour not spent perfecting touchscreen technology. Every marketing dollar promoting iPod features was a dollar not building iPhone awareness. The trade-off seemed crazy until you realized what Apple was really choosing. This is where opportunity cost gets messy. It's not just about the dollars we spend or the time we lose. It's about the emotions that follow. Think about your own version of this moment. Maybe you turned down a job offer 5 years ago, and now you wonder what that other life would have looked like. Or perhaps you chose to move to a new city, giving up proximity to family and old friends. The choice felt right at the time, but what about now? Reid Hoffman, LinkedIn's founder, calls this the adjacent possible. All the paths that were within reach at any moment, but got closed off by the choice you made. When he chose to focus on professional networking instead of dating or gaming platforms, he wasn't just picking a business model. He was choosing which version of himself to become. The strange thing about opportunity cost is how it ages. What felt like a sacrifice yesterday might feel like a gift today. Ask anyone who got rejected from their dream job only to find something better 6 months later. The initial sting of missing out transformed into relief when they realized what they would have been stuck with. Daniel Kahneman's research on decision-making shows that we tend to regret actions we took more than actions we didn't take. But here's what's interesting. The people who understand opportunity cost seem to regret less overall. They know every choice comes with a price, so they spend less time mourning what they gave up. What if the goal isn't to eliminate regret, but to make peace with it? What if understanding opportunity cost means accepting that you can't have everything, and that's not a limitation, it's just how life works? The next time you catch yourself wondering, what if? Try this. Ask yourself what you gained instead of what you lost. Jobs didn't just kill the iPod. He created space for something revolutionary. Chapter 2. Finding Opportunity in Everyday Moments. Part 1. Simple Decisions, Big Ripples. When NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory analyzes mission trajectories, they calculate how a single degree of course correction early in flight can mean the difference between reaching Mars or drifting into empty space. Your daily choices work the same way. Small adjustments compound into dramatically different destinations. Take Sarah Chen, a marketing manager who decided in 2018 to make coffee at home instead of buying her daily 4 to 50 latte. The immediate savings seemed modest, about $1,600 per year, but Sarah invested that money in a low-cost index fund. 5 years later, with market growth and compound interest, her coffee fund had grown to nearly $12,000. More importantly, the morning routine freed up 15 minutes she started using for meditation, which improved her focus at work and contributed to a promotion 2 years later. The real power wasn't in the money saved. It was in the chain reaction her choice triggered. Research from Duke University found that 40% of our daily actions are habits, not conscious decisions. This means nearly half of what shapes our lives happens on autopilot. James Clear documented how British cycling coach Dave Brailsford transformed his team's performance through marginal gains, improving every small element by just 1%. Water bottles were redesigned, massage techniques were refined, even the team's pillows were optimized for better sleep. These tiny improvements accumulated into Tour de France victories and Olympic gold medals. Your morning commute follows the same principle. Walking to work instead of driving might save you $8 in gas and parking fees. Over a year, that's $2,000. But the 20-minute walk also adds up to 87 hours of exercise annually, equivalent to running a marathon. The cardiovascular benefits could extend your life by months or years. The mental clarity from morning movement might help you spot opportunities you'd otherwise miss. Consider the opposite choice. David Williams, a software developer, chose convenience over these small gains. He drove to work, bought lunch out, and ordered dinner delivery most nights. Each decision felt insignificant, but over 5 years, the accumulated costs, financial, physical, and mental, created a very different life trajectory. His emergency fund remained empty, his energy levels dropped, and his career stagnated. What small choice are you making today that's quietly steering your tomorrow? Part 2. The latte or the leap. When Sarah Chen walked into her favorite cafe at 7:47 a.m., she faced the same choice she'd made 247 times before. The barista knew her order: medium oat milk latte, extra shot, $4.50. She handed over her card without thinking. But on Tuesday morning, something shifted. Sarah paused. That daily latte cost her $640 per year. Her dream photography workshop in Iceland, $1,800. The math hit her differently this time. Not because she'd never calculated it before, but because she just received another rejection email from a gallery. Her portfolio needed work. That workshop could change everything. This is where most financial advice gets it wrong. The decision isn't really about coffee versus money. It's about competing visions of who you want to become. Consider Reed Hastings in 2007. Netflix was printing money from DVD rentals, but he made a choice that seemed crazy at the time. He invested heavily in streaming technology, knowing it would hurt short-term profits. His board questioned the decision. Wall Street analysts called it risky, but Hastings saw what others missed. The opportunity cost of comfort was obsolescence. Blockbuster's CEO John Antioco faced the same fork in the road. He could have pivoted to digital streaming, but the immediate costs seemed too high. Store revenues were still strong. Why mess with success? This thinking cost Blockbuster everything. Not because they made a bad decision, but because they chose today's comfort over tomorrow's possibilities. The same logic applies to Sarah's latte. She's not just buying coffee, she's choosing immediate pleasure over future growth. Neither choice is right or wrong, but both carry hidden costs. Sarah decided to experiment. She bought a decent coffee maker for $60 and started brewing at home. The Iceland Workshop Fund grew by $22 each week. Small change, but it accumulated into something bigger, a shift in identity. She wasn't just saving money, she was becoming someone who prioritized long-term dreams over short-term comfort. 6 months later, Sarah's Instagram featured photos from Reykjavik's Northern Lights. The workshop had connected her with a mentor who helped her land her first gallery show. The latte money became the bridge between her current life and the one she wanted. What daily choice are you making that's quietly funding someone else's dreams instead of your own? Part 3. Spare time. Spend or save. When Marcus started his third Saturday shift at the warehouse, he thought he was getting ahead. The overtime pay boosted his weekly earnings by nearly 30%. His bank account grew steadily, and for the first time in months, he felt financially secure. But something else was happening. The community college pottery class he'd been taking for 2 years moved to Saturday mornings. He dropped out, telling himself it was just a hobby. His weekend hiking group found a new trail leader. His girlfriend Sarah mentioned how they rarely spent mornings together anymore. 6 months later, Marcus realized what he'd traded. The pottery class had been his creative outlet, the hiking group his main social connection, and those quiet Saturday mornings with Sarah had been when they planned their future together. The extra money felt less significant when measured against these losses. Research from the Journal of Consumer Psychology shows that people systematically undervalue time when making financial decisions. We can easily calculate the dollar value of overtime work, but struggle to quantify the worth of relationships, creative pursuits, or rest. Consider Maria, who chose differently. When offered weekend consulting work that would double her monthly income, she declined. Instead, she spent those hours building a podcast about urban gardening. The podcast generated no immediate revenue, but connected her with a community of like-minded creators. Within a year, these connections led to speaking engagements and eventually a book deal that surpassed what the consulting work would have earned. The Harvard Business Review tracked professionals who regularly worked overtime versus those who protected their personal time. The overtime workers saw short-term income gains but reported higher stress levels and fewer career opportunities after 3 years. Their personal time, seemingly free, had carried hidden value in relationship building, skill development, and mental restoration. Your hours aren't just time slots to fill. They're investments in different versions of your future self. When you spend an evening learning guitar instead of earning extra money, you're betting on the long-term value of creativity over immediate cash. When you choose rest over productivity, you're investing in tomorrow's energy and clarity. What if you started treating your spare time like a portfolio? Some hours for income, some for growth, some for relationships, some for pure restoration. The key is recognizing that every hour spent is an hour not spent elsewhere. The true cost of that overtime shift isn't just fatigue, it's everything else that hour could have become. Part 4. When no means more. Warren Buffett once said something that changed how I think about busyness forever. A reporter asked him why he could read for hours each day while other CEOs barely had time to think. His answer? I can afford to turn down most things. That simple statement holds the key to something most of us miss, the hidden power of saying no. Consider Steve Jobs when he returned to Apple in 1997. The company was drowning in dozens of products, computer lines, printers, digital cameras, even gaming consoles. Jobs did something radical. He said no to almost everything. He cut Apple's product line from over 40 items to just 4. His team thought he was crazy. How could removing options create value? The answer became clear within months. By saying no to the scattered approach, Apple could say yes to something bigger. Perfect execution. The iMac launched in 1998 and saved the company. Jobs had discovered that every yes to mediocrity was a no to excellence. This principle extends beyond business. Maria, a marketing director I know, spent 2 years accepting every networking event, coffee meeting, and industry conference. She was exhausted and her work suffered. Then she tried an experiment. For 3 months, she said no to 80% of her invitations. Instead, she used that time to develop one meaningful relationship per month and take on a challenging project at work. The results surprised her. Her work quality improved dramatically. She got promoted. The relationships she did build were deeper and more valuable than the dozens of surface-level connections she'd been chasing. Think about your own week. How many yeses are you giving to things that don't align with your priorities? Each commitment you accept closes the door to something else. When you say yes to scrolling social media, you're saying no to reading. When you say yes to that extra meeting, you're saying no to focused work time. The math is simple but profound. You have 168 hours each week. Every hour committed to one thing is an hour unavailable for everything else. The question isn't whether you can afford to say no, it's whether you can afford not to. What if you treated your attention like Jobs treated Apple's product line? What would you eliminate to make room for what matters most? Chapter 3. Making Peace with More Options. Part 1. The Trouble with Too Many Doors. When psychologist Barry Schwartz studied shoppers at a grocery store, he discovered something that would change how we think about modern life. People facing 24 varieties of jam were less likely to make a purchase than those with just 6 options. More choices, it turned out, didn't mean more satisfaction, it meant more paralysis. This isn't just about jam. It's about the fundamental challenge of living in an age where everything feels possible. Consider what happened to Reed Hastings when he founded Netflix in 1997. The company started by mailing DVDs, but Hastings faced a crucial decision point in 2007. He could continue focusing on the profitable DVD business or bet everything on streaming. The choice seemed obvious in hindsight, but at the time, it meant potentially sacrificing a proven revenue stream for an uncertain future. What made this decision particularly difficult wasn't the risk of failure. It was the abundance of seemingly good options. Hastings could have expanded internationally with DVDs, developed gaming partnerships, or created premium physical media services. Each path offered genuine potential. This is the modern predicament. We're drowning in doors we could walk through. Take something as simple as planning a vacation. Our parents might have chosen between the mountains or the beach. Today, we scroll through hundreds of Airbnb listings, compare flight prices across dozens of sites, and read endless reviews. The abundance that should liberate us often leaves us exhausted before we even pack. The streaming wars perfectly illustrate this phenomenon. Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney+, HBO Max, Apple TV+, and countless others compete for our attention. Each platform offers compelling content, but subscribing to all of them would cost more than traditional cable. So we're stuck making calculations. Is the new Marvel series worth keeping Disney Plus another month? Should we drop Netflix for HBO Max this quarter? The weight of these decisions isn't just financial, it's cognitive. Psychologists call this decision fatigue, and it's real. Every choice, no matter how small, depletes our mental resources. What's particularly insidious is how this abundance creates a new kind of regret. When you had 3 TV channels, you watched what was on. When you have 3,000 options, you constantly wonder if you're missing something better. The opportunity cost of every choice becomes a persistent whisper of doubt. The solution isn't to eliminate choice. That's neither possible nor desirable. Instead, we need to recognize that having more options changes the game entirely. The skill isn't just making good choices. It's learning to live comfortably with the roads we don't take. Part 2. Good enough is great. In 2004, a psychologist named Barry Schwartz conducted a simple experiment that changed how we think about satisfaction. He gave 2 groups of people the same task: buy a pair of jeans. One group could only shop at stores with limited selections. The other had access to every store in the mall with hundreds of options. The second group found better-fitting, higher-quality jeans. But here's the twist. They were significantly less happy with their purchases. This finding points to something counterintuitive about modern life. The pursuit of the perfect choice often makes us less satisfied than accepting a good one. Consider Sarah, a marketing director who spent 3 months researching the best laptop for her freelance work. She read dozens of reviews, compared specifications, and agonized over every feature. When she finally bought one, she constantly second-guessed herself. Meanwhile, her colleague bought the first laptop that met his basic needs within budget. 6 months later, both laptops performed equally well for their work, but Sarah still felt regret while her colleague felt relief. The difference wasn't in the quality of their choices, it was in their approach. Sarah fell into what researchers call maximizing behavior, always seeking the absolute best option. Her colleague practiced satisficing, a term economist Herbert Simon coined by combining satisfy and suffice. He looked for something good enough that met his criteria, then stopped searching. Netflix understood this principle when they removed their star rating system in 2017. They realized that users spent too much time rating and re-rating content instead of watching it. The endless optimization was creating decision fatigue, not satisfaction. Their thumbs up, thumbs down system intentionally limits precision to encourage action over analysis. The same dynamic plays out in restaurants. Danny Meyer, founder of Union Square Hospitality Group, deliberately keeps his menus focused. A menu with 12 great choices will make diners happier than one with 40 mediocre options, he explains. The opportunity cost of choice paralysis often outweighs the benefit of having more alternatives. What if we applied this thinking to our daily decisions? Instead of researching the perfect morning routine, we could commit to one that works reasonably well. Rather than endlessly comparing vacation destinations, we could book the first one that excites us and fits our budget. The goal isn't to lower standards, it's to recognize that perfectionism has its own opportunity cost. While we're searching for the ideal choice, we're losing time, energy, and often the simple pleasure of moving forward. Sometimes good enough isn't settling. It's wisdom. Part 3. The Power of Saying No. In 2012, Warren Buffett received a call that would cost him approximately $43 billion. Kraft Heinz wanted to merge with Unilever, and Buffett had the resources to make it happen. After a weekend of consideration, he said no. The deal would have been massive, headline-grabbing, and potentially profitable. Instead, Buffett chose to keep that capital available for what he called better opportunities down the road. This wasn't hesitation or fear. It was strategic refusal, recognizing that every yes carries the weight of countless no's. The power of saying no reveals itself most clearly in what doesn't happen. When Oprah Winfrey turned down numerous lucrative television deals in the early 2000s, critics questioned her judgment. She was walking away from guaranteed millions. But those refusals freed her to launch OWN, her own network, which eventually became worth over $2 billion. Each no she uttered was actually a yes to something bigger. Consider how differently this plays out in our daily lives. The average professional receives 120 emails per day and spends 28% of their week managing them. Yet research from the Harvard Business Review shows that only 14% of these emails require immediate attention. The rest represents someone else's priorities, demanding space in our schedule. Sarah, a marketing director I know, transformed her career by implementing what she calls the Tuesday rule. Every Tuesday, she reviews her commitments and cancels one thing: a networking event that doesn't align with her goals, a meeting that could be an email, a project that serves someone else's agenda but not her own. This simple practice freed up 8 hours per week, time she reinvested in strategic thinking and skill development. The mathematics are revealing. If you're earning $75,000 annually and spending 10 hours per week on activities that don't advance your goals, you're essentially paying $18,000 per year for the privilege of being busy. That's the opportunity cost of poor boundary setting. Netflix mastered this principle at scale. In 2007, they said no to expanding their DVD by mail service internationally. Instead, they poured resources into streaming technology. Competitors like Blockbuster continued saying yes to everything. More stores, more late fees, more of what was already working. Netflix's strategic no's positioned them for a future that others couldn't see. What boundaries could transform your next 6 months? The answer often lies not in what you should start doing, but in what you should stop accepting. Part 4. Happiness in Missing Out. In 2009, while everyone else was scrambling to attend South by Southwest, the hottest tech conference of the year, Brian Chesky made a different choice. He stayed home in San Francisco and worked on Airbnb instead. His co-founders went to Austin without him. That weekend, while thousands networked over barbecue and beer, Chesky redesigned their entire user interface. The changes he made during those quiet days became the foundation for their explosive growth that summer. This wasn't about being antisocial or missing opportunities. It was about recognizing that sometimes the best choice is the one that doesn't look exciting from the outside. We've been conditioned to believe that missing out equals losing out. Social media feeds us a constant stream of experiences we're not having, deals we're not getting, connections we're not making. But what if missing out is actually a skill worth developing? Consider the research from Dr. Dan Herman, who first coined the term FOMO in 2000. His studies showed that people who constantly chase experiences to avoid missing out report lower life satisfaction than those who deliberately choose to skip certain opportunities. The difference isn't what they're doing, it's how they think about what they're not doing. When you skip the office happy hour to have dinner with your family, you're not missing out on career advancement. You're choosing relationship building over networking. When you don't upgrade your phone every year, you're not falling behind on technology. You're choosing financial flexibility over having the latest features. The magic happens when you reframe missing out as making space. Every no creates room for something else. Every declined invitation preserves energy for what matters more to you. Think about Warren Buffett's famous approach. He's missed countless investment opportunities that made other people rich. He didn't invest in tech stocks during the dot-com boom. He sat out the cryptocurrency surge. Yet his consistent returns come precisely from this selective missing out. He only invests in what he truly understands, accepting that he'll miss most opportunities. The same principle applies to your Saturday afternoons. When you choose to read a book instead of going to that party, you're not missing social connection. You're choosing mental nourishment over social obligation. What would change if you started celebrating the things you consciously choose to miss? Your calendar would have breathing room. Your bank account would reflect your actual priorities. Your energy would go toward experiences that genuinely matter to you. The question isn't whether you're missing out. You always are. The question is whether you're missing out on purpose. Chapter 4. Choosing with Purpose. Part 1. What matters most. When Warren Buffett was asked about his greatest business mistake, he didn't mention a bad stock pick. Instead, he pointed to Berkshire Hathaway itself, a failing textile company he kept running for 20 years instead of investing that money elsewhere. The opportunity cost? Billions in lost returns that could have gone to better investments. This story captures something most of us struggle with daily. We get so focused on what we're doing that we forget to ask what we're not doing. The question isn't just whether something is good, it's whether it's the best use of our limited time, energy, and attention. Consider Sarah Blakely's journey to creating Spanx. While working as a door-to-door fax machine salesperson, she noticed other salespeople climbing corporate ladders, earning steady promotions. The safe choice was obvious: stay the course, collect regular paychecks, build a conventional career. But Blakely saw the opportunity cost differently. Every day spent in that job was a day not spent building something she truly cared about. She saved $5,000 and spent 2 years developing her product while keeping her day job. The opportunity cost of those late nights and weekends? Rest, social time, and the comfort of a predictable routine. The payoff? A billion-dollar company and a life aligned with her deeper ambitions. This is where most advice gets it wrong. We're told to follow our passion, but passion without considering trade-offs leads to poor decisions. The real skill is learning to see the full picture, what you gain and what you give up. Think about your last major decision. Did you only consider the upside, or did you honestly examine what you were sacrificing? When Netflix CEO Reed Hastings decided to split the company's DVD and streaming services in 2011, customers revolted. The stock price plummeted. But Hastings understood the opportunity cost of not making that move, being left behind as the world shifted to streaming, short-term pain for long-term survival. The most successful people aren't necessarily the smartest. They're the ones who consistently ask better questions. What am I not seeing? What am I giving up? What would I do if I started fresh today? Your values act as a filter, helping you weigh these trade-offs. When you know what matters most, decisions become clearer. The opportunity cost of ignoring your core values is living someone else's life. Part 2. Small steps, big difference. When James Clear was struggling as a college baseball player, he made a decision that seemed insignificant at the time. Instead of trying to overhaul his entire approach to training, he committed to showing up at the gym 15 minutes earlier each day. That's it. 15 minutes. Most people would have laughed at such a modest change. What could 15 minutes possibly accomplish? But Clear understood something profound about how change actually works in the real world. Those 15 minutes became 30, then an hour. The earlier arrival meant better equipment availability, more focused workouts, and conversations with serious athletes who also showed up early. Within 2 years, Clear had transformed from a bench warmer to a starting player who eventually made the all-conference team. This story illustrates a truth that research consistently confirms. Small changes compound in ways that dramatic gestures rarely do. The opportunity cost of waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect plan is almost always higher than the cost of starting small today. Consider the Stanford marshmallow experiment, but focus on what happened decades later. The children who delayed gratification didn't just resist the marshmallow. They had learned to see small choices as building blocks for bigger outcomes. They understood that saying no to one thing meant saying yes to something else, even if that something else was invisible at the time. Warren Buffett applies this same principle to investing. He famously avoids exciting, high-growth opportunities that don't align with his strategy. While others chase the latest trends, Buffett consistently chooses boring, profitable companies and holds them for decades. The opportunity cost of chasing quick wins? Missing the extraordinary power of compound growth. The magic happens in the accumulation. A woman who starts putting $25 a week into an index fund at age 25 will have more money at retirement than someone who starts with $1,000 at age 45. The second person might think they're being more serious about investing, but they've already lost the most valuable asset: time. Your morning routine works the same way. 5 minutes of journaling might seem pointless compared to an hour of meditation, but the person who journals consistently for a year will likely experience more clarity than someone who meditates intensively for a month and then stops. What small change could you make today that would still matter in 5 years? The opportunity cost of thinking too big might be missing the power of starting small. Part 3. Letting go to grow. In 2012, Sarah Blakely held a meeting that would change everything. The founder of Spanx had just received a $1 billion acquisition offer from a major retailer. Her advisors were ecstatic, but Blakely said no. She turned down financial security to keep building something that mattered to her personally. That decision illustrates something most of us struggle with. The hardest thing to let go of isn't always what's obviously wrong. Sometimes it's what looks perfectly reasonable from the outside. We're taught to think of letting go as dramatic moments, quitting toxic jobs or ending bad relationships. But often the most transformative releases are quieter. They happen when we stop clutching things that once served us but now just take up space. Consider Reed Hastings at Netflix in 2007. The company was thriving with DVD by mail service. Revenue was strong, customers were happy, and competitors were scrambling to catch up. Yet Hastings made the uncomfortable choice to bet everything on streaming, a technology that would eventually make his successful DVD business obsolete. His board thought he was crazy. Wall Street punished the stock. But Hastings understood something crucial. The cost of holding on to yesterday's success would be tomorrow's irrelevance. Most of us face smaller versions of this choice daily. You might be holding on to a career that pays well but drains your energy, or maintaining friendships that no longer inspire growth. These aren't obviously terrible situations. They're just taking up the space where something better could grow. The research on sunk cost fallacy shows how we cling to things simply because we've already invested in them. A Stanford study found that people who bought expensive concert tickets were more likely to attend even when they no longer wanted to go. We confuse past investment with future value. But here's what Sarah Blakely discovered. Saying no to the billion-dollar offer wasn't really about the money. It was about choosing the discomfort of uncertainty over the comfort of settling. 5 years later, Forbes valued Spanx at significantly more than that original offer. What are you holding on to that once made sense, but now just occupies valuable real estate in your life? The opportunity cost of not letting go might be the very thing you're actually seeking. Part 4. Living your own story. When Sarah Blakely turned down that billion-dollar offer, she faced the same question every person confronts when choosing their own path. What if everyone else is right and I'm wrong? The difference between Sarah and most of us wasn't courage. It was clarity about whose story she was actually living. Consider David Chang, who walked away from a finance career to open a small noodle bar in Manhattan's East Village. His parents were horrified. His friends thought he'd lost his mind. The opportunity cost seemed staggering, trading a six-figure salary for ramen and uncertainty. But Chang had figured out something crucial. The biggest risk wasn't financial failure. It was spending his life optimizing for someone else's definition of success. Momofuku became a culinary empire, but that's not really the point. The point is that Chang recognized the hidden opportunity cost of conventional wisdom. Every day he spent climbing someone else's ladder was a day not spent building his own. Think about the stories you tell yourself about what you should want. A corner office, a house in the suburbs, the respect of people whose opinions you're not even sure you value. What if the real opportunity cost isn't what you give up to pursue these things, but what you sacrifice by not questioning them? I've watched people spend decades chasing promotions they didn't want, buying things they didn't need, impressing people they didn't like. The sunk cost fallacy applies to entire life trajectories. We keep investing in paths that no longer serve us because we've already invested so much. But here's what research on life satisfaction consistently shows. People who make decisions based on their own values, not external expectations, report higher levels of fulfillment even when their choices seem objectively worse on paper. The opportunity cost of living someone else's story isn't just about missed experiences. It's about the person you never become. Every choice you make because you think you should is a choice you're not making because you want to. What would change if you started asking yourself, whose approval am I optimizing for? What would I choose if I knew I couldn't fail? What would I choose if I knew I would? The most expensive thing you can do is live a life that isn't yours. The math is simple, even if the choices aren't. Chapter 5. Winning and Losing the Everyday Game. Part 1. Smart Shortcuts. A surgeon who removes 30 organs a day doesn't deliberate over each scalpel movement. She developed automatic patterns years ago, freeing her mind for the complex, life-saving decisions that truly matter. This is the power of decision architecture, creating smart shortcuts that handle life's routine choices so you can focus on what counts. The average person makes about 35,000 decisions daily, from what to wear to which route to take to work. Research from Cornell University shows that most of these micro-choices drain our mental energy without adding meaningful value. Yet we treat each one as if it requires fresh deliberation. Barack Obama famously wore only gray or blue suits as president, eliminating one daily decision to preserve mental bandwidth for running the country. Mark Zuckerberg adopted a similar approach with his gray t-shirts. These aren't eccentricities. They're strategic choices about where to spend cognitive resources. The principle works beyond wardrobes. Batching similar tasks eliminates the mental switching costs between different types of work. Instead of checking email throughout the day, processing it in 3 designated time blocks reduces decision fatigue while improving focus. The opportunity cost isn't just the time spent on each email, it's the mental energy lost transitioning between tasks. Consider the 2-minute rule popularized by productivity expert David Allen. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately rather than adding it to your to-do list. This eliminates the decision of when to tackle small tasks while preventing them from accumulating into overwhelming backlogs. Personal rules function like organizational policies. They remove the need to re-decide recurring situations. I don't eat after 8 p.m. eliminates nightly negotiations with late-night snacking. I exercise every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 a.m. removes the daily question of when to work out. The restaurant industry learned this lesson decades ago. Successful chains like McDonald's don't reinvent their processes daily. They systematize everything from cooking times to customer greetings. This consistency isn't about limiting creativity. It's about creating space for innovation where it matters most. What decisions are you making repeatedly that could become automatic? Which routine choices are stealing energy from your important ones? The goal isn't to eliminate all decisions, but to be intentional about which ones deserve your full attention. Smart shortcuts aren't about taking the easy path. They're about clearing the path to what matters most. Part 2. When it's okay to gamble. In 1998, a 25-year-old Stanford MBA named Kevin Systrom had a safe path mapped out in front of him. He'd landed a coveted consulting job at a prestigious firm, complete with the salary and prestige his classmates envied. But something nagged at him. He kept sketching app ideas in notebooks, teaching himself to code late at night. His friends called it a hobby. His parents worried he was throwing away his expensive education. 2 years later, he walked away from consulting to join a failing startup called Bourbon. Most people saw this as career suicide. Systrom saw it differently. He understood that the biggest risk wasn't failing. It was succeeding at something that didn't matter to him. Bourbon eventually became Instagram, which he sold to Facebook for $1 billion. This story illustrates something most of us get backward about risk. We obsess over the downside of bold moves while ignoring the hidden cost of playing it safe. Every day we don't take that leap, we're betting against ourselves. The question isn't whether to take risks, it's learning to distinguish between smart gambles and foolish ones. Smart gambling starts with understanding what you're actually risking. When Sarah Blakely cut the feet off her pantyhose and spent 2 years pitching her idea to hosiery manufacturers, she wasn't gambling her life savings. She was working nights, spending weekends in her apartment, risking rejection and embarrassment. The worst case, she'd be exactly where she started, with some good stories and hard-won sales experience. The best case, she'd create Spanx and become the world's youngest female billionaire. The difference between reckless and calculated risk comes down to asymmetry. Look for situations where your potential gains dwarf your potential losses. Blakely risked her evenings and weekends to potentially transform her entire life. Systrom risked a comfortable but uninspiring career to chase work that energized him daily. What makes someone ready to gamble smart? First, they've done their homework. They understand the landscape, the competition, the real odds. Second, they've stress-tested their downside. They know exactly what they'll lose if things go wrong, and they've made peace with that cost. Finally, they've identified what they'll regret more: trying and failing, or never trying at all. The careers that matter most, the relationships that transform us, the ventures that change everything, they all start with someone willing to bet on themselves when the odds aren't guaranteed. The real gamble isn't taking the leap. It's assuming you'll get another chance if you wait. Part 3. Lessons from bad bets. When Warren Buffett reflects on his investment mistakes, he doesn't just count the money he lost. He calculates what he could have earned if he'd made different choices. In 1988, he bought $1.3 billion worth of Coca-Cola stock. Smart move. But 2 decades earlier, he'd passed on the same company when it was trading for a fraction of that price. The opportunity cost of that earlier hesitation? Roughly $8 billion in gains he never captured. Bad bets teach us more than good ones because they force us to confront the full weight of what we gave up. Every misstep carries 2 lessons: the obvious loss we can see and the hidden gains we sacrificed along the way. Take Sarah Chen, a software engineer who left Google in 2007 to join a promising startup. The startup folded within 18 months. She lost her equity, her stock options, and 2 years of Google's meteoric rise. The visible cost was painful enough, about $200,000 in immediate compensation. The hidden cost hurt more. The Google shares she would have accumulated were worth over $800,000 by 2010. But here's where the story gets interesting. That failure taught Chen to evaluate risk differently. When she started her own company in 2015, she structured it with multiple revenue streams and conservative cash flow projections. The venture sold for $12 million 3 years later. The lesson from her earlier mistake, understanding the true weight of what you're risking, became the foundation of her later success. We all make these miscalculations. The job we took for slightly more money that killed our career momentum. The relationship we stayed in too long because leaving felt scary. The investment we held onto because selling meant admitting we were wrong. The entrepreneur who mortgaged his house to fund a restaurant during the 2008 financial crisis. The couple who bought a bigger home instead of maxing out their retirement contributions in their 30s. The graduate student who spent 6 years on a PhD in a shrinking field because quitting felt like failure. Each story shares a common thread. The moment when we realize we've been calculating costs incorrectly. We focused on what we'd lose by changing course, but ignored what we'd lose by staying put. The smartest people aren't those who never make bad bets. They're the ones who learn to read the hidden price tags faster. They understand that every choice casts a shadow, and sometimes that shadow is bigger than the choice itself. What shadow are your current decisions casting? And more importantly, what would you do differently if you could see it clearly? Part 4. Your next best move. When Netflix CEO Reed Hastings decided to split the company's DVD and streaming services in 2011, customers revolted. Stock prices plummeted 40%. The media called it corporate suicide. But Hastings had seen something most people missed. Staying comfortable was the riskiest move of all. This is the paradox of our final chapter. The biggest risk isn't making the wrong choice. It's making no choice at all while the world changes around you. I've watched countless people get stuck in what I call decision paralysis, endlessly weighing options without ever moving forward. They research every angle, seek more opinions, wait for perfect information that never comes. Meanwhile, the very opportunities they're analyzing slip away to people who act with incomplete data but clear intention. Consider how Amazon's Jeff Bezos approached this challenge. He developed what he called the regret minimization framework. When facing major decisions, he'd project himself to age 80 and ask, "Will I regret not trying this?" This simple question cut through endless analysis and pointed toward action. The framework works because it flips our natural tendency to focus on immediate costs. Instead of asking, "What might I lose?" it asks, "What will I wish I had attempted?" This shift transforms opportunity costs from a constraint into a compass. Sarah, a marketing director I know, used this approach when deciding whether to leave her stable corporate job to start a consulting practice. The safe choice was obvious. Steady paycheck, benefits, predictable career progression. But at 80, would she regret not testing her entrepreneurial instincts? The answer was clear, even if the path wasn't. 6 months later, she was earning more than her corporate salary while working half the hours. More importantly, she was building something entirely her own. The key insight here isn't that everyone should quit their jobs. It's that your next best move becomes visible when you stop trying to eliminate all risk and start asking better questions. What skills are you not developing? Which relationships are you not building? What version of yourself are you not becoming? Your opportunity cost lens doesn't require perfect vision, it requires honest assessment. Look at where you're spending your time, energy, and attention. Are these investments moving you toward the person you want to become, or are they simply maintaining who you've always been? The best move isn't the safest one. It's the one you'll be proud to remember.